The smell of pine was thick in the air, a stark contrast to the stale, unspoken tension that had become the norm in our suburban existence. Christine had been insistent, almost desperate, about this couple's retreat. A weekend in a cabin in the mountains, disconnected from the digital world. A chance to reconnect, she'd said, her eyes betraying a nervous energy I'd chosen to ignore, chalking it up to stress or work. We hadn't been okay for a long time. I thought naively, perhaps, that this retreat was an olive branch. I wrestled our luggage out of the car, the exertion doing little to ease the ache in my chest. For months, there had been this impenetrable wall between us. Intimacy felt like a hollow performance, punctuated by her absence, her stares. It was like she wasn't really there, even when she was physically in the same room. I really had, to break through, but it was like talking to a ghost. The lodge itself was rustic but charming, nestled amidst towering redwoods. The receptionist, a woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, greeted us warmly. She handed me the check-in form and a welcome packet. I felt a glimmer of hope, the first one in months, as I took the clipboard. "You've got a beautiful spot here," I told her, and I genuinely meant it. "Thank you, dear. You too. Enjoy your stay," Brenda said with a knowing smile before she pointed at the small desk where I could fill it out, nodding to a nearby pen. Christine had walked off to use the restroom, the small heels of her boots clacking on the wooden floor. I unfolded the paper, my hand hovering over the first line. Name, address, emergency contact, typical stuff. But then, near the bottom, a familiar name jumped out at me, screaming across the sterile white. It wasn't our usual medical contact, but there was a name next to his, written as emergency contact for what I assumed must be my wife's. Dylan. I felt an arctic coldness spread through me. It wasn't just the name. It was the familiar way Christine had always said it, like a gentle whisper, never out loud enough for me to truly hear or understand. A hot, acidic burn started to crawl up my throat as 1,000 little pieces clicked into place. The late nights at work, the secrecy around her phone, the withdrawn distance. It all made hideous sense. My gaze didn't move from the check-in sheet. The other names, our names, were right above that. Dylan. The anger began to bubble. I'd suspected vaguely the possibility, but seeing it there on paper, the cold, hard confirmation, it was like an invisible fist had slammed into my gut, forcing out my breath, leaving me gasping. This wasn't the woman I thought I'd known, the woman I'd married. Christine came back and found me frozen by the small desk. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice betraying just a flicker of worry, maybe something more. My throat tightened. I held out the check-in form, my finger tracing the damning words. She followed my finger, and her tan turned the color of ash. She stopped in place, a tremor going through her hand, her eyes widening in silent panic. "How could you?" My voice came out as a hoarse whisper. She started to stammer. It's not." But the lie wouldn't form. She'd been so sure of herself, so confident, like she could continue to play out this fake marriage to keep whatever twisted situation she'd gotten into. But in that moment, all of the confidence was gone. She could see on my face that her game had just ended. It's not his name. It's not an emergency contact. Did you think I wouldn't see it? Is this what a chance to reconnect looks like to you? Did you think you could sneak away to your lover without me seeing it when all along you've tried to hide him from my life? I could feel myself starting to raise my voice, a roaring thunder starting inside my chest. Her eyes welled up. The false display of emotions now infuriated me even more than I was before. "I'm so sorry," she finally whispered, the words falling flat. There wasn't conviction behind it. Her tears only seemed to irritate me, almost as much as the lie she'd been living. My anger started to climb with every shaky, defeated sentence that escaped her lips. The lies that had been suffocating me were finally found out, and I would see them for what they were. Absolute filth. I had worked so hard for this. For us, the home we bought together, all of our shared dreams, and she'd been throwing it all away for a casual affair with this guy who she just barely knew. As a professional, the rage started to come into the forefront. It wasn't calm or controlled, but the most angry I'd felt in my life. "Sorry?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that it? This entire charade? Our entire life? And you're just sorry? Where's the sincerity? Where's the goddamn human? I gave you everything and you've rewarded me with this? Who does this make you? This kind of monster that throws someone else to the curb?" I started raising my voice, no longer whispering. My body shook like it couldn't quite contain the rage. "Let me tell you what we're going to do here, Christine. You are going to pack your bags and you're going to leave. You're not welcome in my life anymore." Her eyes widened even more. She stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as her carefully constructed facade cracked and then shattered. Brenda at the front desk started glancing our way with concern. She didn't seem too worried, but a small worry seemed to brew when I started getting loud. "Wait, wait!" She started scrambling, holding up a hand, a pathetic attempt to stop me. I grabbed the key off the desk, my hands trembling, but now with intent. "I'll call you an Uber," I said, no longer feeling pain, only cold calculation. "Go pack up what little belongs to you and be out here in 5 minutes, or you will be dragged out myself." The color left her face, and a look of pure panic set in. "You can't," she said, looking defeated. "I can, Christine, because for better or for worse, you threw away better a long time ago. There is only the worse for you from here on out, and my God, I'm going to watch as you sink." Christine ran off, shoes tapping a frantic beat on the wooden floor, and through the narrow hallway. I stood there, feeling a strange mixture of hollowness and a perverse sense of satisfaction. I wanted to drag it out, to punish her in ways that had just sprung up in my mind, but the sight of the broken woman heading to pack her things gave me a certain sense of closure that felt much more powerful than my dark thoughts. I waited for her outside, not saying a word as she came out with the luggage. She didn't meet my eyes and went right to the parking lot. Her silence was much louder than anything she could have said. My Uber arrived in minutes, and I loaded her suitcase into the trunk without turning, without another word. I closed the trunk, got in the car, and shut the door on what had been our marriage the whole time. She did nothing, didn't make any sort of move, look at me, or make some kind of pitiful effort to try to stop me. It wasn't needed. She understood. It was over. I paid the Uber driver to take her to the nearest town to where she could try to figure things out herself, as she had done to me. As the car pulled away, I watched her shrink away in the rearview mirror, and I knew in that moment that while it was a harsh lesson for both of us, I'd finally found my peace. It wasn't the reconnecting I'd thought it would be, but it was the start of something new, and as far as I was concerned, the only type of reconnection I needed, a disconnection to her for good. I went back inside the lodge. Brenda gave me a sympathetic smile and handed me the keys to my now single-person cabin. "We can always use an extra set of towels, and I can add breakfast to your stay." "That would be great," I said as I took the keys. I felt the last vestiges of herds start to leave my chest. This retreat was supposed to be a chance to save us, but she'd never given us a chance. Now, though, I did have a chance, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't have to wonder what my wife was doing or who she was doing it with. I spent the weekend hiking through the woods, the crisp mountain air clearing my head, one step at a time. The lodge had an open fire pit, and I met several interesting, funny people. All of us laughed together. This wasn't the plan, but in retrospect, it felt right. I felt like myself again, the kind, loyal, trusting person that I had been before all this chaos. I could laugh again even though I didn't think it was possible. Not anymore. As I drove home on Sunday evening, I didn't feel the burden of sadness or grief, only a quiet, hard-earned understanding. There were no feelings left, nothing to hang on to, only a need to continue my life. Christine's lies had nearly destroyed me, but now that the storm had finally passed, I was more grateful than ever that she was no longer a part of it. As I pulled into my driveway, my own untouched space, I felt the only way I had ever needed to reconnect was with myself. In a quiet mountain retreat that didn't involve anyone else but me, myself, and I. The journey had not been kind, but I could be. I would.